guys. Hello. Welcome to Soberish. This is my first episode of Soberish, not in the studio. I'm sure Brian is at home right now having a fucking cow listening to the audio. Oh my God. What is your last name?
Edwards.
Edwards.
Yeah, Edwards.
What is it on Instagram?
Anamkara.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because my astrology outfit is called Anamkara Astrology.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. All right. I was like, oh, I forgot to ask her last name. This is Elise.
Yeah.
This is Elise.
Hey, guys.
I am Jessa. Here is the motherfucking astrology episode. You have no idea how excited everyone is going to be. They've been waiting for this.
Well, you totally sold me on the pattern. I haven't even fucked with the pattern yet.
Have you? You haven't looked at it yet?
I haven't, but I've been told really good things by people that I feel are like way more advanced in astrology.
It's such good transit stuff, and it's so specific. Because I hate it when people are like, "It's astrology is general stuff." The person who said it on my Instagram story recently was like, "It's also general," and then called me a Taurus, and I was like, "Oh yeah, super."
Wait, a tourist or a Taurus?
A Taurus.
Because they're wrong in both, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst description of me possible. It's also great proof that it's not general because there's nothing about a Taurus that would describe me at all. There's like nothing. So, anyway, sorry, I was distracted by...
So the pattern, are they like going to... Can they sponsor you? Like, that would be great.
They really... You know how many fucking businesses should run ads on my podcast? Seriously. So we have my birth chart here, which is pretty, right? It's a pretty birth chart. I'm going to make it the cover of this episode. I used to be sad because I didn't have the cross. I wanted that fucking grand cross in my chart.
You don't want a grand cross.
I don't want a grand cross.
I have a grand cross and it's bullshit.
Oh, really?
It's really tragic. Yeah, because you have these, series of squares and these oppositions, and like when you think you have it all, balanced and whatnot, something transits one of it, and then like your whole life goes to shit.
So let's talk a little bit about, you thought I was an Aquarius, just judging by my personality?
Well, there's so much about you. I definitely thought you were an Aquarius. One, because I responded so much to you and your comedy, and I was like, but also I was like, I felt that you were really different from me, and I'm a Leo.
Okay.
And so I was like, it makes sense that I'm like responding, but like also can feel like the difference. But then I definitely looked at your chart and not. Well, I also knew that you had Pisces influence. I was like, you have to have strong Pisces influence. The meth addict, the drugs and just surrender and all this kind of stuff situation that were all things that I really responded to. I have Neptune in the first house. I was like, you got to have a heavy Pisces influence. I was like, you're definitely an Aquarius with like heavy Pisces influence. Turns out,
just a Pisces with Pisces influence.
You're a fucking dead ass Pisces.
But 0 degrees doesn't make a difference? Are you one of these people that don't believe in cusps?
Oh, I don't believe in cusp at all. And in fact, the 0 to 1 degree of any sign and the very last degree of a sign are the most powerful. Like they actually encapsulate everything that sign is about. Yeah. Like I come from the Karmic astrology persuasion. So like I have a lot of like conscious choice was involved in you writing your chart and this kind of stuff.
Oh my God. I never even heard of that, but that makes so much fucking sense.
Oh yeah. Like in Karmic astrology and from where I come from, your natal chart's actually a roadmap that you wrote for yourself so that you can chart where it is that your soul has been, what it's learned in the past, what it comes into.
Holy fucking
with all
shit.
of these like preconceived notions of the stuff because it's like your moon sign is very karmic. It's stuff that you've just been that you've repeated emotional existence or patterns. So now this is what you look for. This is how you operate. This is how you nurture yourself and all that kind of stuff. And then you also have charted what it is you came back to Hogwarts to do.
Right.
Physical existence isn't like all fun and games, right? It's kind of blows. It's tough.
Yeah.
So that's how then you look to see, to your lunar nodes and stuff like that. What is it that I need to integrate into my existence, into my process for my soul to evolve? So I'm like, I believe in you chose everything down to your name, the parents that you were born to.
I love it.
So that you gave yourself, I also call it like you wound your own watch. And then that watch is like very just individual to you,
I've never heard that description of cusps before. I only heard that people agree with them or don't agree with them. But I've weirdly my personality was so Aquarius until like 2 months ago. I could see Pisces in childhood, and then my personality was so Aquarius. Now, my Mars and Mercury are in Aquarius, and I think I've been living most of my life as my protective self. Mm-hmm. Would that track with Mars and Mercury?
Well, yeah, I would definitely also look to see your progressions and to see if anything's like progressed into the sign of Aquarius. But your Mars and Mercury being in Aquarius is definitely big because, well, Mercury is your chart ruler because your ascendant is in Virgo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like let's just give a little like let's just do like what we do in orbits, which is, Sun, Moon, Ascendant, and just kind of give you like a general, that's your trifecta, it's your foundation. So your Sun and your Moon are both in Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. It is literally the sign that like goes back to God. If you look at the zodiac as you start as an infant, and then you go when you return to the big nebulous mist that we're all, come from. So
now this is for all of the Aries, because when I talk about astrology, they say I always shit on Aries because I'm always just like, Aries is a fucking child. There was a joke once where someone said that Jesus's birthday was in April, and I was like, there's no way Jesus was a fucking Aries. And then I've gotten a lot of shit from Aries fans, but what I'm talking about is that the Aries is the child of the zodiac, right?
It's the infant. So and the infant first learns that it is, right, with its first gasp, and it doesn't really care about anything else because it's not aware of anything else.
Yeah. That's a pretty good description of the Aries.
Right? Yeah. No, I mean, it is. And so what's interesting is like, it's the first fire sign of the zodiac, Aries, and then and so you can't get mad at it. You can't get mad at it because, like, a baby, you don't hit a baby for screaming or just being like, I need to do this, or it just Aries is the leap before it looks,
Yeah.
And that's why Aries is the impulsive. It encapsulates the impulse of life. It just happens,
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to Leo, it's like gotten a few other, years of knowledge under its belt. It's learned that I am, and then I have, and then I think, and I feel, and now we're ready to create. And then it has the will to do stuff. So when a Leo does something fucked up, it's very much, and Leo is associated to the adolescent / teenage years in cognitive development and just, the circle of life. So yeah, you don't scream, you don't yell at a baby for doing what it does, but you definitely yell at a teenager for doing something that's against your will.
I will make fun of a baby on a podcast though, so keep that in mind, Aries.
No, they can be very infantile, but they're also really about it. But also, your Venus is in Aries.
Do I know that my Venus is in Aries?
Oh, yeah.
What a great fucking description of me and love.
I love it. I gotta say, one of the best, I personally feel the best, what is David Piccolomini's podcast? The Tinder Tales. Fucking right. Your Tinder Tales was the funniest Tinder Tales I've ever heard.
Oh, hell
Yours
yeah.
and Aaron. It was so funny. And I felt a lot of...
God, we were only one threesome in on that episode, too.
I know.
God damn, we should go back.
Yeah, you have to. Please tell the rest of us how to do it. I'm not even on Tinder. But you guys made me want to be on Tinder. I was like, if it's going to work out like this sounds great. But very Aries, Venus. Okay, so my overall thing. So Pisces is artistic and, nebulous and it's empathic, right? And it has no boundaries. That's the going back to God. It's like letting go of the physical limitations that physical existence, puts on the spirit. And then the spirit just gets to go back to what it came from.
Wow.
So both your self-identity and your emotional like mode of operation are both in this like very loving, compassionate, artistic, kind of diffuse, right? Because like it's all things at one time. Watery, water energy.
Yeah.
And then your ascendant sign, which is how you see the world and therefore how the world sees you upon first encounter, is the opposite sign of Virgo.
Yeah.
And Virgo has all the boundaries. Virgo's literally the sign of discrimination and learning how to perfect and refine things. So, and you have to be you have to be able to discriminate between, this and that. And the rest of you is like not into it. But but it's funny because the way you come off upon first meeting you is like very like, oh no, this person has their boundaries up. Oh no, this person is consistently judging me for what I am or not doing and analyzing me.
Fuck, a revelation in all this love stuff in the last couple of years. Really kind of meeting my shadow is that I have no boundaries.
Yeah.
You can push me into anything. The only thing I have is I have a steel gate far enough out that's really an illusion. It's really just the way I carry myself that gives the illusion that I won't take any shit when I am in fact fully prepared to take so much shit.
To take all the shit.
And that has really like crumbled in the last year to where I don't even have that anymore. And it really kind of tapped me more into this Pisces energy because I carried myself like an Aquarius, but it was all kind of a facade because in reality, if you figured out that you could get past that, or if I let you in past that, you could just do whatever you want because I'm like incapable of having boundaries. It was a very difficult thing for me. So I don't know what happened, but I learned that in the last few months, really.
Right. Well, it's funny because I also have learned boundaries in the past, year. About the past year.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I didn't know that I didn't have boundaries or that I wasn't putting up boundaries in the right places. Because I am very consciously like, I want to see the world as we are one,
Yep.
And then I realized that when boundaries that I didn't even know were there were being, harmed or disrespected or just plowed through, it was because that person didn't respect me. So obviously, if I don't respect my boundaries, someone else isn't going to respect my boundaries.
Right.
But the only time it became a problem is when someone actually didn't respect what was behind the boundary, which is myself.
Yeah.
That red flag came up and I was like, oh my God, what are these red flags? Where are they coming from? Because I hadn't identified the boundaries. So
it's a really interesting path that a lot of people have been on for the last year.
Oh my God.
It's been the word boundaries for the last few months, but it's like the cumulative effects of the journey of the last year has been like, oh shit, I have walls.
Yeah.
I have walls that keep me away from things that could be positive, but like just boundaries, just like healthy boundaries is a new concept, I guess.
Totally. 100%. I wonder if it has something to do with the age of Aquarius. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're moving into it. We're going to be in it for like 2,100 years. But
yeah. Oh, we could do a whole episode on it because that's all Soberish is about.
Is the age of Aquarius?
Uh-huh.
No way.
Yeah. Soberish for 4 episodes was about addiction, and now it's just about the ascension into higher dimensional reality, which is the age of Aquarius.
This is fucking amazing. I think this is like why you were put on this earth. I'm not even I'm not looking at your map, but because you spent so long thinking that you were an Aquarius, and we're coming from the age of Pisces.
We're at like 0 degrees
Aquarius
between Pisces and Aquarius, right? Uh-huh.
And so that means that we're like in the most ultimate Aquarius-ness of it all. And Aquarius is all about the age of enlightenment, like that each individual is responsible for their own enlightenment.
Yeah.
And you can't crawl up someone else's stairway to heaven that they built. You have to engage and understand what your heaven is and then how you're going to ascend to it.
Yep.
And we're coming from a place where like, no, everything is one size fits all,
Yeah.
Prepare to die for it.
Yeah, I had a near-death experience in 2000, and higher dimensional beings, I guess, I don't know, I went back to the source, and the source told me that if I wanted to come back and assist in the awakening, that like I had like a job and stuff. So I think that's the only reason I have podcasts and was on Comedy Central and stuff, was just so I could gather up the troops like I agreed to do. That was in 2000. I should have probably had you do that.
Wow. I mean, we can look it up. We have the internet, and we can definitely look up what was happening in 2000. I mean, and you also, so you're midheaven, the noon time where the sun is the highest on the day of your birth, which is it indicates your most public self,
Right.
and kind of like your place in society, or like what you can do to be your most high achieving, most visible self, is in Gemini. So you're very verbal about what it is that you're bringing to the world. And also Gemini midheaven is a big comedy something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people that make their living literally talking.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting, yeah.
But the Virgo ascendant Pisces dichotomy is huge. And it literally is like you come across as, or you view the world as someone who has a lot of discernment, a lot of, discriminates between this is right for me, this is wrong for me. Very you can't penetrate what Virgo, sets in its way, because Virgo's all boundaries. And then it so happens that you're like the most permeable soul ever.
Wow.
Ever.
Right.
But then, and then like Aquarius like wants to, it's so interesting because like it's almost like you have a really good sense of self identity in terms of how you act on things. Like what impels you to activate and move and like impose your will. Like your Mars is in Aquarius. So you have a very distinct, very individual to you way of going about things and activating. It's a fixed air sign. So it's fixed in its ways. It knows itself and how it does things. And it doesn't want anyone else to like try to bite off of their style. It's like very not cool to Aquarius. And at the same time, it's like you can't even you whatever Aquarius is, you can't even try to imitate it. It just falls flat because Aquarius is so individualistic. It's so its own self. It wants you to be its own self.
Yeah,
wants you to be your own self. So I feel like the way it's kind of like a real misnomer in terms of you. Kind of, I don't know. Gosh, your emotions must be like so much, and yet like totally fleeting. And
they're very. Yeah, that's a great description.
And it's just, and also what's interesting is your sun and your moon also fall into your sixth house, which is ruled by Virgo. So there's a lot of this reinforcement between that boundaries, complete lack of boundary. It's totally reinforced, and I think you've just gone along as I shit on Aquarius a lot, but I love Aquarius.
Yeah.
Like I love Aquarius. I'm just a Leo, so like I'm seeing it from the other side. They both have to do with creative self-expression. The expression of the individual, but Leo needs an audience,
Right.
Leo archetypally is the benevolent monarch, that rules and reigns over the people, and it is loyal to them as long as they're loyal to it.
Yeah.
And it's like this beautiful, harmonious, whatever, unless it's a tyrant and a shitbag, and then, they're ruling over people that don't want anything to do with it, and that's a problem. But on the other side of it, like Aquarius totally rules its own domain. It just does it it doesn't need any applause or an audience for it to do it. In fact, when people start following them around, they're like, yo, fuck off. And then they literally teach people by example how to be how and why they need to express creatively their own individual sense of
Right.
self. But then that once they teach them by example, they're gone. It's an air
Right.
sign, keeps it moving. So, I don't know how much stuff. I don't know. I also just think it's like really interesting that you are your Mars and your Mercury are also very close in the 5th house, which is ruled by Leo. So there's kind of like a natural, it's kind of just like your, domain. You're here to create stuff in a really off the wall way.
Yeah.
Stuff that's like seemingly out of left field, but might also literally be the evolution of mankind.
Yeah, that's pretty pretty on point. What did the 6th house and the 5th house represent?
So the 5th house is the creative. It's the I will. It's ruled by Leo. So literally, anything that you create, both artistically, also procreation, also in the 5th house, and and then the 6th house is where you really, it's like work and routine. It's where the creative play of the 5th house gets refined through repeated, addressing. Like it's a routine. The 6th house, among other things, is like if you have like a daily hygiene regimen or your work, your day-to-day work, not your career, your work. Also, we've identified the 6th house as a big thing in comedy because we literally have a routine, right?
Interesting, yeah.
So it's something that is like constantly addressed on daily. And it's interesting because your sun and your moon are both in there. So it's like your daily routine is where you realign and re-identify with your emotional self and your ego self. And if something had been, say, an overwhelming force as to how you spent your day, or what kind of routines you engaged in,
right,
then it would ultimately you would be aligning with that thing or that person or whatever it was that you spent your days doing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, like where your natal placements are isn't like where you spend all your time, but it's just the natural outlet for it.
Right. Is there anything in my chart that I like play characters for a few years and then completely change my entire life premise? Is there something that indicates that? So like I was a born again Christian for 5 years. I was a meth addict for 5 years. I've had all of these I was a hypnotist. I was hardcore into recovery. Like I just have these chunks of my life where I'm like when the people from different parts of my life meet me, I know this makes me sound like a fucking narcissist, but they know totally different versions of me because is that part of that 6th house thing where I just kind of become the thing I'm
this reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I personally feel like one of the things that drives me insane about both Aquarius and Pisces is that they really just seem to just like stop on a dime and pivot in a completely different
direction. That's a lot of why I
direction.
thought I was Aquarius. I didn't know that was a Pisces trait also.
Well, they do the same thing for different reasons. Uranus, its ruling planet is Aquarius, its ruling planet is Uranus, which is the planet of evolution, visionary change. And it's because it's like really fast. It just like blasts a lot of energy at anything that it really encounters. So when you think of Saturn being like status quo and like this is how it is, this like kind of like stagnant, energy, Aquarius just like blows that shit apart, and then anything that's left standing is safe to build on. It's like we're not keeping these things around just bless you. Oh, I'm just saying that into the microphone. I think just like kind of change in general as like a life force or something that you constantly readdress, both mentally and like in the way you communicate and in what you communicate and how you think. That's all represented, by this Mercury energy. And it's like playing. It's, you kind of play at it until you like either make something that identifies with your sun, you know, or like that your sun becomes part of, you know, like how your life force is communicated to the world, or you just kind of like let it go. This is another thing. Okay, so Uranus on your chart where it's placed, not in terms of where, you know, your Aquarius, you know, planet's placed in Aquarius, but the actual planet of Uranus is in the second house, which represents your value, like your value systems.
Interesting.
So my guess is when things, you know, periodically, and there's a connection between that and your Saturn and your Mars and your Mercury. Okay, this is where it is. This is where the through line is. It's because this is like so wild, because then you also have this other connection between your Neptune. Yeah, your Neptune is trine your Saturn. But okay, so you do have this square, okay? This between how you think, how you do things, like how you activate, what you go after and how, and like your relationship to the physical limitations of life and things that you have to like have a concerted effort to overcome or progress in. You know, Saturn puts a big kibosh on like all the fun and enthusiasm.
Mine's in Leo, right?
Yeah, yours is in Leo, which is interesting. And it's in the 11th house, which is also interesting, but we'll get into that. But when a planet comes across any of your either Uranus, Saturn, Mars, or Mercury, it is setting off what is ultimately a change in it. It will immediately change your mindset. It immediately changes how you do things. It immediately changes you know, like your relationship to the rules.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And also your, you know, kind of like vision or how you relate to humanity in a way. But how you relate to humanity is in your second house of very physical, you know, tangible value systems.
Okay.
Yeah. Including things like romance. But mostly we think of the second house, although it's ruled by Venus, as material goods more.
Pentacle energy.
Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Pentacle energy. That's right. So did you want to talk?
Yeah, let's talk about. So, well, for the last couple of years, the premise of my life, because we're going to talk about transits,
right?
The premise of my life has really been around love, kind of. I won't get too deep into the higher consciousness stuff, but I believe that we are going from 3D reality to the higher dimensions, and that we kind of have to transmute the old programming. So I have been in that process of kind of transmuting the old love to like 5D unconditional love, collective consciousness type love. And anyway, it's been a huge theme. So I was curious if that showed up.
Well, it totally does. And also, again, anything that kind of affects your Uranus energy or anything. I mean, just the relationship for you of the Aquarius and Pisces is like exactly what you just kind of said. It's like Aquarius like kind of doesn't show love, except it gets very enthusiastic about like humans being humane, about humanity in itself, like as like an object almost, not a collective of people. And so and then all of a sudden it also lets go of its fixity, and it goes back to God in Pisces. It kind of like lets the ocean of emotion, the ocean of God back into it.
I kind of feel like you're describing my summer.
Well, it sounds like a pretty groovy summer though. And it, you know, it's funny because it's like Aquarius like is cares the most, and yet it has no feelings.
Yeah.
And so And then all of a sudden, like it can't keep that barrier anymore. So, I don't know exactly what happened, but I want to say that in the last 2 years, you had a pretty major connection between Venus and the transiting Venus. I'm doing this to the day, so this is for September 5th. You had Venus conjunct exactly your Saturn. And when I was looking into this, I was like, wow. This, it said, okay, well, one of the things that I looked up, it said that Venus, transiting Venus conjunct your natal Saturn constricts your affection and love for practical reasons. Reconsidering the meaning of personal and professional relationships. And while it can diminish the kind of romantic feeling or what you usually think of as, loving feelings.
Yeah.
And it can also be very favorable, like materially or economically, professionally. So you might have had like a full stop on romance, as you kind of reassessed it and what it meant to you, how it had affected your life previously, whether or not there were boundaries or not previous, and then all of this and how it affects your kind of like status in life.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, so I would say that's like probably like a good.
This was the summer that I filmed This Is Not Happening, and my marriage was falling apart at the time because in retrospect, I think me doing This Is Not Happening and being on the brink of making it or whatever, what I perceived was going to be making it, and a husband who didn't want to let me do that, I guess, really kind of shook things up. I mean, obviously comedy won.
Yeah.
But...
good thing we need you.
Yeah.
I mean,
you need me doing these 3 shows a year.
We need you to do all the shows and definitely some more astrology podcasting now. And just like overall like life experience, like something that has like kept us really separate from each other is the fact that like no one talks about their hardships, and like all this stuff used to be so closeted, where whatever your struggle was, if it was out in the open, you were the fucked up one, and now it's like, no, like podcasting and just like everyone literally being responsible for their own enlightenment it's revolutionary and it's evolutionary.
It is huge. Yeah.
And I can tell by your chart and from knowing you and your work, your comedy, that you're on the path, man.
Hell yeah.
You're in the vortex.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I would like love to see exactly what happened. I want to see the out of body experience. The what did you call it?
Near death experience.
Oh, near death experience. Yeah, near death experience.
So I think it was between New Year's and my birthday. I'm almost positive because by my birthday, I was already wearing prom dresses, and the near death experience had something to do with that. I was wearing a tiara. It's fucking weird when I think back now because for months leading up to my near-death experience, I was wearing a wedding veil around for no fucking reason. Just like out at the dance club and from like a, synchronicity standpoint. And when people would be like, are you getting married? I'd say, no, I'm getting divorced.
Wow.
And I wasn't. Like I'd been long since, and then I died in the wedding veil. So I don't know when the card filled up, but we were down some other twin flame rabbit hole. Who, me?
Yeah.
And but you've since looked up the chart of the month of my near-death experience because I can't remember the exact date.
Yeah, you have so much stuff happening right here that it's like, and when they say, when whoever it was that told you that you had like met or like overcome your karmic path or journey or whatever, so Pluto transiting Pluto and Chiron. Okay, so like literally soul level transformation, and then like the wound that heals if you keep addressing it, were both exactly on your Neptune.
Oh, shit.
And Neptune is, your ruling planet because your sun and your moon are both in Pisces.
Wow.
Okay, so like it's like, oh yeah, this place where and this is obviously everyone was activated by the energy. I mean, Pluto and Chiron were both in Sagittarius for everybody at this time in 2000. But for you, it was literally like what you communicate, how you communicate, all of that changing on a soul level.
Holy shit.
Like there's no way that it could not. The moon was also exactly the transiting moon was well, I guess I shouldn't do that because we don't have an exact date. So we'll move on from there because the moon, the moon is always speeding right along. But okay, then the other thing is your Jupiter or transiting Jupiter was exactly on your Chiron, your wounded healer. I'm huge into Chiron. And you said that you know about the wounded healer, but you're not like super familiar.
Right.
So Chiron is, in mythology, he's a centaur, and he's like the wisest. He's like a super wise teacher. He taught all these ancient Greeks, some of them gods, some of them humans, some of them half human, half god, how to do all the things. He taught them about science. He taught them about medicine, art, all this stuff. And he's immortal, and he could teach all these people how to, how to heal things. And then he gets shot with a poisoned arrow that's been tipped. It was a revenge thing. I don't remember the whole scenario. But the point is, he gets hit with an arrow that is powerful enough to wound him, but not kill him. So now he has to live eternity with this wound, which is a huge slap in the face because he literally had reached this level of notoriety teaching the greats how to heal.
God damn it.
Teaching them science, or teaching them medicine. And so instead of like letting him live as a gimp for the whole time, this goddess, he basically exchanged his life and became a star. He was able to die, but he would still live immortally in the heavens, right? So Aquarius for us is Aquarius for us. Why am I saying Aquarius is that? Chiron for us is this wound that never heals. Okay, everyone has one. I can't remember how long a Chiron stays in a sign, but I want to say it's like 2 years or something like that.
Okay,
maybe longer. I could look that up. I do have a computer in front of me, but the most important thing is where it is in your life is the thing that is kind of like the thing that inhibits you, but if you don't allow it to inhibit you and instead like use it to teach others from your wound, that is how you heal yourself and how you can like impart a lot of power for that person to like become a maverick. Like we're all kind of karmically connected.
Yeah.
And so when someone is like karmically, all of my encounters, from the person who I fucking gave change to on the street to like, that ass bag that dicked me over like, a year or so ago. They're all so karmic for me. And when you find yourself just like teaching or imparting information to someone, it's probably because that's the knowledge that they needed to like go on and grow.
Right.
But it's also, you needed to be able to do something with your pain.
Interesting. I wonder where that was for the last 2 years when my whole podcast was just me unpacking my trauma.
I mean, the fact that right now, like there's like 5 planets that are all in Virgo, and they're all in your 12th house of your subconscious.
Jesus.
So it's like, no, there is like all of the universe is like just shining like a big beam into your subconscious, and you're like, ah. But at the same time, like I think over these past few years, you've just like kind of gotten more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So now you're like kind of ready for that.
Yeah.
And what's cool is that like when you shine light on things, then like you're not afraid of them anymore.
Yeah, it definitely has been like a finding my shadow. And then I call it the duffel bag of feelings. It was like a year of what I called the infinite onion of trauma, where it was like, how many layers are there to this? And then I finally like, boom, I hit pay dirt. And then it's like, oh, fuck, I have emotions. I have a lot of emotions, and because I just didn't feel them forever. And then now I'm just like, for a while I was just dragging around this duffel bag of feelings, and now it's starting to get to the part where I'm like, oh, I can just integrate all this stuff and actually be a much more balanced, more superpowers, you know, with these emotions.
Yeah, and just like a more whole, fully integrated individual. And interestingly, you don't have any intercepted signs, which is like when a whole house gobbles up a sign. So it doesn't have the lessons of that sign, and the character traits of that sign didn't have a way to express themselves from a young age. So like you kind of like never build that muscle.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I have my interception is Virgo and Pisces. So I have a problem with boundaries, similar to you, but different in the sense that my either having all the boundaries or none of them was a product of my early environment. I chose to be in an environment like that so I could like learn these hard lessons.
Yeah.
And then teach others what to do, like how to do it, right? But yours is a much more individual thing. It's like, no, I've the ascendant sign in karmic astrology, the sign on the ascendant was your sun sign the very last time you were here. So your very last incarnation, you were a Virgo.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then you learn how to operate as a Virgo. You learn how to analyze things, how to make things better, perfect things, refine them. I always think of it's not practical, but useful hypercriticism.
Yeah.
That Virgo kind of like gives to its natives. And yet, in terms of what your moon expects, what your emotions expect, where your soul expects, is I am but a drop in a pool of emotion and stuff. I don't know. I'm like kind of loving this connection between Pisces and Aquarius because it reminds me of two really far out images. One of them is that this one time someone described us all being part of God as God looking into a mirror, and God, it reflects God, a singular being. But God wants to understand God better, so God touches the glass of the mirror and it shatters into an infinite number of of individual parts. Okay, and now no two of them are the same. And we are each one of those individual things.
Wow.
It's still reflecting God back as a whole.
Yeah.
But all as...
This is just like what we were just talking about, that the procession of the ages is just a series of consciousness splitting up into a million different pieces and then coming back together and splitting up into a million pieces and coming back together.
Yeah. This year, like I always came from a very, like I loved unicorns and witches and vampires and all this kind of stuff, but I never was into science fiction. It was like a little too sciencey for me. And it's only in recent, and so I was always into like metaphysics and I was always into astrology. And then my best friend, like the mirrors that I found were all super into science, and they never had religion, like they didn't care about God. And then we kind of like switched places. I remember coming back for like winter break, and my best friend, who is a science major, and she wanted to join the FBI, and I thought I was gonna be a cult leader. Like I don't know what I was gonna do. And she came back and she was like, dude, I'm like she's like, I'm actually becoming a religious studies minor because there's so much stuff in my science that I'm like, dude, there really is more. There's the truth is out there. Like, it's not just an X-Files slogan, Yeah. And she was like, and you can't describe the truth or even get at the truth without like accounting for God. Even if you just put God in as like a as like a variable, as a constant, like an
Yeah.
I, whatever
Yeah.
that I number is, like this. So she's like, we don't have a name for it, but it's like there. So now I'm like into finding out about it from all of these different cultural perspectives.
I
And
love it.
I know. And that's how I was. I went the other way. I was like, no, God's always been like a thing. Like it's always been like I've always identified with God. I mean, I didn't want to be confirmed Catholic. My mom and I almost killed each other over it. But I was always very like I was always spiritual, and I knew that religion was just a vehicle, like, to get to spirituality. Some people need it more than others. But then I was like, dude, I'm like seeing all this like overlap between vibrations and, I was like, wow, how did I not understand that waves in physics, or like sound waves and light waves, like they're all waves of energy. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, how did I not understand this? And then, I mean, when people talk about astrology being bullshit, and I'm like, you know what? I think it's like a codex.
I call it like a map key. So it's just like, there's a part of you that knew that you were going to forget who you are when you came here, and you left yourself a map. And if life is a video game, which is my favorite metaphor for what reality is, there is cheat codes in that if you learn about the transits and you learn about the energies, that doesn't mean you can't do something, but why would you choose to do it when the energy is pushing the other direction?
Yeah.
This Jupiter in retrograde and Saturn in retro. How long has Saturn been in retrograde?
Oh, I thought Saturn turned direct.
Saturn's turning direct next week, I think.
Oh, okay.
Jupiter turned direct last month, but that Jupiter retrograde was a game changer. That was really when all of this love stuff came to a
boiling point.
Yeah. I broke up like within a few days of Jupiter going retrograde, and then went on this like journey of figuring everything out on my own, and then found out I was codependent, and then started healing that wound. And then right around the time that it went direct was like right around the time that it was like I finally like figured it out. It's pretty crazy.
Jupiter's also is direct in your chart. I mean, Jupiter went retrograde right through my first my first house of identity. I'm a Sagittarius ascendant, so it literally went direct on my ascendant sign.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I think I may have also let go of like my last little glimpses of codependency, and especially what I think is like a real nodal moon node thing. Where's your moon nodes? What's the deal with your nodes? This is like
what do the nodes mean?
The nodes are your path to enlightenment. If we're talking your chart being a map that you left for yourself, and breadcrumbs back to what you've already experienced, and then like a huge neon sign pointing to what you need to do for your soul to evolve, so you can like leave the matrix indefinitely if you want to. Your north node is the sign that you literally consciously said, this is what you need to integrate for you to break this shit, at least for this cycle. And for you, let's see, where are your nodes, man? Your node, oh my God, we have like completely opposite nodes. That's so fucking crazy. Okay. So yeah, your north node is in Libra. It is 27 degrees Libra. So what you actually are learning to integrate is is how to relate in relationship in a healthy manner, in a diplomatic manner. Because the opposite way of doing things, what you're used to doing, is doing the I am. You have no problem acting as an individual. But you also crave partnership. In fact, you crave, Pisces doesn't crave just like partnership. It literally craves like
engulfment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It wants to morph into the other. It wants two to become one. And yet the way that you like relate and associate to things, naturally is in Aries, and that's also the sign of your love sign. Also, you have this like your Venus is opposite Pluto, so There's a lot of like deep soul transformation that all is happening along the lines of the I am versus the we are.
Yeah.
You naturally already know how to operate as the I am.
Uh-huh.
And there is both a push and a pull towards operating in partnership as the we are.
Yeah.
And like, but it's like every experience that you've had in the we are up to this point has either negated the I am because you've surrendered it.
Yeah. Fuck.
Or you didn't even like, maybe the reason what brought you to the I am was so like either so self-motivated or something that just like or just like you felt like partnership was like have to happen. So I just want to talk about because I have your chart for your near-death experience.
Yeah.
So on top of having transiting Chiron and Pluto on top of your Neptune, you also had transiting Jupiter, which expands all things, exactly conjunct your Chiron. And also your Chiron and your Venus are both in Aries, and it's like right in your, what's that called? Your North Node is in between those two things. So to me, I see like a relationship, and when you think of like something transiting something, first it affects your love.
Yeah.
Right? And then it affects your Venus, and then it affects I'm looking at my degrees here, and then it affects your North Node, and then it affects your Chiron, or it affects your nodes, and then it affects your Chiron. So basically, let's say, I don't know. Oh, well, let's say Jupiter. So this is what happened with Jupiter. Now, I forget how long it takes like Jupiter to move, but let's say it was like a year before your near-death experience. Okay. It may have been, I should really look up. Can you look up how long Jupiter takes like how fast it moves through a sign?
I thought it was a year.
Through a sign?
Mm-hmm.
Really? I think it's longer. But whatever it is, so
like 15 months maybe?
All right. So maybe like 3 months before your near-death experience, something expanded your love and affection, like real big. It could be, I don't know, you fell in love with something.
Okay.
Your sense of
Meth.
Okay, totally possible. I mean, totally. We're here for it. So, and then also it was in opposition to your natal Pluto placement. So, yeah, this is a very intense, obsessive kind of.
I was in a very codependent.
In love.
Yeah. There was an extremely toxic. Love would be an exaggeration, but back then I would have called it love.
Right.
I was in an extremely toxic relationship from like October, maybe.
Okay.
October to. Yeah, that's probably about right. September, October. And then we broke up like a month before my near-death experience.
So what I see here is that first something expanded your sense of love and your focus on love and your obsession with love, your investment and your engagement.
The tone that you have is really perfect.
So you're all up in this love shit, right? And then it the next thing that it triggers is your South Node, which is that of like leaping before you look, only like being the I am. On my own path, me. I don't know how to whatever in partnership, so I'm gonna I'm just gonna be very impulsive and act only in my own right with literally no regard for anything or anyone else. There's only me. And then literally within maybe like a couple of weeks, the Jupiter on top of your Chiron is like full stop breaks.
Wow.
And it's in the 8th house, which is literally the house of death, rebirth, transformation.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I'm in this toxic relation. I just told this story because this story is possibly connected to how I died, but physically how I died. But I freak out and break up with this boyfriend and move into a different house. I move into a house of a guy who told me that he was sent from Hawaii to awaken somebody. And he was like, I'm pretty sure it was you. Yeah, I was starting to interject earlier, but then I was like, never mind, tell your story. He said that he came from a group of people in Hawaii and they told him to come wake someone up. His mother's name was Karma. And he said, I think you were the one. And so he sent me this thing of Nietzsche and schizophrenia. And he was like, this stuff is going to happen to you. And then I die. And then I wake up in a house, the house of the person I had broken up with. And there's Nietzsche. Thus spake, whatever the fuck, is on the thing. And I read it and I understand what it's talking about with an article that guy had sent me about the superhuman and how we were evolving into the superhuman. And then his name has come up several times. It's been spray painted on things, this guy's last name. Anyway, I contacted him on Facebook and he's like, yeah, my mom's name's Karma. And I came from Hawaii, but I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, we definitely had a long conversation, but this isn't the first time that somebody has spoken words to me that they don't remember. But yeah, this is a fucking wild era. And then I go single. I don't even fuck somebody for over a year after this. It was the year of the unsexable beast. I think it was 2001, July of 2001 when my soulmate showed up. I would love to do a collection of twin flame charts to see if there's a indicator and a collection of near-death experience charts to see if there is a indicator.
I mean, I like really can't even get over how, because I didn't even realize when I first pulled up this date for for your near death experience, I was like, okay, well, Jupiter is on Chiron. Okay, like let's look further and stuff. And then I realized like, oh no, like you have this like love energy that is like 10 degrees away and from then your South Node, which is like, when we talk about being our worst self,
Oh, I was the worst self.
So like Jupiter amplifying the worst self mode of operation and then crash landing into it's expanding the wound that you have, which is...
Here's the interesting thing about the timeline. So I had this toxic relationship with this guy for, I think it was exactly 3 months before my near-death experience. It was basically me taking over his house and stuff, and he was very hot, but he like barely spoke English, and it was like a dumb relationship. But I was high on meth, and I brought all my baggage from my last relationship, and it was insane. But I end up leaving and moving into the house of the Hawaiian, who was like, you can come stay here, and then later told me that I was invited to come stay there because he needed to protect me during this time. This is all before I die. Once I die, I never... He doesn't remember. Yeah. He remembers me living there. He's like, I just don't remember telling you that I was supposed to wake you up. But I just was like, this dude is fucking high. When he was telling me this stuff, he was like, I was supposed to bring you here to protect you. And then I die, and then I can't find this dude anywhere to be like, oh my God, I know what you're talking about, right? Because it was gibberish when he said it to me. Anyway... 2 weeks before this would totally line up. I don't know the exact date, but now it's starting to come back. 2 weeks before. So the guy I moved out of his house, my supposed best friend, started fucking him, and she immediately moved into his house. So I'm at the Ohm, the same place that I later die. And it's so funny how much of this took place at a bar called the Ohm. And I threw a drink into her face. And she was like trying to apologize, trying to talk to me, and I threw a drink into her face. The day that I die, I'm back at this house, and her and my former boyfriend are fighting, and I end up stuck like counseling her. And I'm like, why am I counseling this bitch, But I'm just feeling all this love and compassion for her, which is like out of character for me because I'm kind of a bully in this phase of my life. And then I tell her nothing outside of you can affect you, good or bad, unless you let it, which is bumper sticker shit right now. But it's like, this was groundbreaking stuff in 2000. And as I'm saying it, I'm like, where am I coming up with this bullshit, Jessa? I'd done a lot of ketamine. And so I was like,
good old ketamine.
Oh, fuck. I was like, do I believe this? And as I'm talking to her, I'm running all the trauma for my life through this thing. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess those things happen, but I got to decide what the narrative was. And then when I died, they told me that that's what I came to learn, and I learned it. So now I get to stay if I want. So like that was the end of my karmic path.
I'm into it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
All I gotta say is this is gonna sound not soberish, but I really feel like there's some like really incredible meditative qualities of ketamine that I feel like I've unlocked some like real secrets of my own DNA.
I'm pro any of the psychedelic,
Yeah.
any of what I would call the club drugs. Any
Yeah.
of the psychedelics are just absolutely to get behind the veil.
No, I'm definitely
Not Coke. I'm not.
Yeah,
calling-
Coke is so unimaginative. Coke is like the alcohol.
Ketamine, yes.
Like,
ketamine, MDMA, acid, mushrooms, DMT. You can get ketamine therapy.
I know people who have kicked in horrendous heroin addictions and opioid addictions using ketamine and using acid, or like it was either or, but I know people who have experimented with both as just a lifestyle choice, and they're like, and I never even like considered, like popping a Percocet again, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. But like more importantly, I just think like every time actually Joe Rogan talks about what's that? DMT? No, well, I love DMT. I love synthesizing my own. But when he talks about, what do you call those when you have no senses? It's a sensory deprivation, chamber. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, why don't you just do it the old fashioned way? Just do a rail of ketamine.
Yeah. What about the K-hole? Yeah. All right. I have to get ready for the show that I wish I didn't have to do because I'm into this right now. But where can people find you to get a reading?
Okay. You can find me at Anamkara Astrology, ANMCHARA. Follow me on Elise, ELISE, Anamkara. I should really change these names. At the same time, I'm really just wanting the collective to come around to Anamkara-ness, which is a soul friend. It literally is Gaelic for soul friend, or a friend from before. And we're an Anamkara is like when you meet someone and you know that you know each other from before and you never met in this lifetime.
Are you like an expert on like past lives and karma?
I've just had a lot of them. Like I've literally had a lot of them, and like they're just kind of like seamless. I think that's where my boundaries lack, is where I don't know if it's like this lifetime or last lifetime, but like whatever, let's just do this. I get more people familiar with their own and like hip to the fact that they've had past lifetimes just by...
I've been trying to find somebody to talk to about past lives on the podcast because it's been coming up in people's readings a lot, and I just don't know that much about that or karma, but it's like a huge theme right now.
But I feel like you know a lot. I mean, you're talking these realms, walk-ins, like stuff like that. How do you feel about Doreen Virtue jumping ship?
It's so strange, right? What the fuck? I only know that because I was looking through oracle cards and I saw people like, fuck this. It's strange. It's really strange.
I think it's like frightening. To me, it's very like when I watch her now, I mean, I don't watch her often because it's like grating to my soul. I'm like, what happened?
So she like was very awake and then went to sleep and became a Christian. Is that what happened?
Well, it's almost like she became a fundamentalist, but in like the weirdest way. Like taking Christ's words verbatim and very literal, where instead of like what I think is a natural thing, which is to just accept that all of these teachings, they converge on the same place, like we come from the same place, they all like come back to the same place. And instead she's like, if you incorporate any kind of light work, anything, if you do anything outside of the word of God, then you are in the devil's domain. And it's like, what?
She believes in the dead. Like, what?
Yeah. Like she actually doesn't do, she's like, she has $1 billion, thing of oracle cards and everything.
She's the angel number
and
lady.
She was the woman who literally has a whole study. I mean, the way that she came up, she had students who would identify what they believed to be their own past lives, and that's how she started to make these fields of, a wise one. I'm a wise one, this is like, so far out, but like elementals, Earth Angels. That's a book, Earth Angels.
Yeah.
But she came up with Earth Angels was something that organically came about by her having students talk about, their own experiences and identifying with them. And so she was kind of like, okay, well, this is like, something this is like a earthly incarnation of an angel, and this is a earthly incarnation of someone who has spent many lifetimes as, a leprechaun or a mermaid or a whatever.
Maybe she was channeling before or something. That's bananas.
Well, whatever she channeled, I want to know what she channeled to make her like flip the script.
Yeah. I'm resistant to the idea that you can go back to sleep that hard, but I've seen plenty of people do it. They bump up against the piece of programming that they don't want to release, and then they just go the fuck back to sleep. So she probably crossed over too far, saw something she wasn't. I definitely in the last month have had plenty of experiences where I'm like, whew, this is flying too close to the sun. I've gotten freaked out. And I've had like, I can see beings, all like the grid work and everything. I can see it constantly. I can see it more than I can see anything else. But like I have like floated far enough off of 3D reality that I've been like, oh, this is a little bit intense for like day-to-day life to be. But yeah, I can't imagine. God, I wish I could stay and not do this show. But all right, guys. Check her out. You can get readings from her. They can book them on your website?
Yeah. Elise Edwards, EliseWalkerEdwards.com. And yeah, Anamkara Astrology. Just hit me up on any of those things and we'll figure it out if you want to over the phone, in person, or, maybe get on the new Discount Disco podcast.
Hell yeah. All right. If you need a reading from me, you can find me at jessareed.com. There's links to all my stuff there as well. See you next week.